take it that we are all clear on the fact that genocide involves two parts. According to the 1948 Convention, there are five specific types of crime, and there is the need to demonstrate intention. I also take it that the crimes themselves are not really that much in dispute. I'll list them very briefly, but what I want to really speak about is the issue of intent. But just to make sure this is on the record, the first crime in the Genocide Convention is killing members of the group, which of course has happened. The war itself, the destruction of Mariupol, the death pits. The second crime is serious bodily or mental harm, bombing hospitals, bombing schools, torture. The third crime is conditions of life, which, as Representative Cohen mentioned, is happening right now. The denial of water supplies, the denial of power. Measures intended to prevent births, that's the fourth crime. Ukrainian women are being specifically targeted for deportation, and there's also evidence that systematic rape is intended, among many other horrors associated with that terrible crime, is intended to discourage Ukrainian women from giving birth in the future. And then finally, one which I find touchingly and painfully specific, the forcible transfer of children of the group to another group. The Russians, by their own count, have deported about 4 million Ukrainian citizens, about a tenth of the population, and they continually boast about deporting children. In other words, they continually boast that they are carrying out genocide. This is true of that particular crime, but the thesis of my brief remarks here is going to be that it is startling that that Russian authorities continually boast about crimes or gloat about crimes, which according to international law are genocidal. As a historian, I can say, and I'll be interested to see what Professor Finkel has to say, but as a historian, I would say that it's striking the contrast here, because in general, regimes that carry out crimes that we would regard as genocidal try to hide them. Here we have, as it were, the opposite approach, where it's been made utterly clear that the highest Russian authorities do not believe that Ukrainian people exists. And throughout the war, at essentially every level of government and media, there have been various kinds of expressions of intention. What I'd like to concentrate on, just in these few minutes, is the kinds of expression of intention. Because, of course, with genocide, people are hesitant. People want to find a way to say it can't be proven. They want to say, how can we look inside someone's mind and know their intention? And of course, that's the wrong standard. That's too high of a standard. With that standard, there could be no criminal law or prosecution of any kind. What historians do, not so different from what lawyers do and other kinds of experts do, is we find different categories of speech or expression which are genocidal. I'm going to list just a few of these in the hopes that this will help clarify the issue. The first I would mention is the historical. As Representative Cohen said, Mr. Putin takes the position that Ukraine never existed, that its existence is a kind of mistake. That's pre-genocidal language. The second kind of speech is the colonial. Colonial actors routinely declare that other states and other nations don't exist. They say so in order to prepare the way to destroy them. And again, this is Mr. Putin over and over again. A third kind of genocidal language is exceptionalism. When you say that the rules don't apply to you, as Mr. Putin did, for example, on September 30th during his speech about quote-unquote annexation, when he asked who made these rules anyway, or as he's routinely done for the last decade or more, claimed that Russia is a specific kind of civilization to which the rules don't apply. And of course, I think many of us would agree that one of the fundamental rules is the rule that you do not commit genocide. A fourth kind of genocidal speech is apologism, when you deny previous genocides. So, for example, the parliament of the Russian Federation passing memory laws, which makes it a crime to speak of specific crimes of Stalin. That habit of denying previous crimes is also an expression of intention to commit future ones. The fifth example would be, which was also already mentioned, is planning. the articles in the RIA Novosti of February and April, both of which made clear that the notion was that the Ukrainian state would cease to exist, Ukrainian elites would be physically destroyed, and everything necessary would be done in order to tame what remained of the Ukrainian masses. The sixth kind of genocidal speech is what I would call the openly exterminatory. And this we can find every day, on practically every day at least, on Russian state television, which, as Mr. Putin himself says, is an organ of the Russian state expressing Russian state policy. That it is. And what Russian state television provides us day after day is with hideously direct claims that the Ukrainians should cease to exist, should be obliterated, should never have existed. Next, as if we need more, the next category of genocidal speech, the seventh category, would be what I would call the dehumanizing, where on Russian media and elsewhere, and again, Russian media means state media, Ukrainians are equated with Nazis or with Satan or whatever it might be, with the clear intention of creating a politics of us and them, where they are somehow below human. Next is the conspiratorial, the idea that the people concerned are not really people because they only exist thanks to various conspiracies, in this case, Jewish and otherwise. And finally, the last category that I notice, and colleagues might notice other ones, is the escalatory, which we know from history. When it turns out that the people that you say don't exist do exist and resist, this just becomes a rationale for killing more, for doing more. It's never a reason to admit that you were wrong, that this people does exist. It's always a reason to do more. So to close, what I would stress is that we, in general, could find an intent in the problem of intent, a way not to see a genocide. Extraordinarily, what the Russians are doing, aside from the crimes themselves, is making that very difficult for us because they are providing a historically unprecedented, I think, level of very clear expression of genocidal attempt all the time at all levels of government and media. Thank you very much.